Different PMs have had different journeys in the last 5 to 10 years, especially if you talk about India.
Think from a software developer to a PM, I think we'll double click on that a little. That's a very interesting.
The skills that I was developing led me to a role that I was hired for the first time. If you look in hindsight at anyone's profile or their journey, because these things are not talked about.
How did the next step happen and how long did you take to kind of frame up your mind?
It's not a relatable domain. You have to talk to someone to figure out stuff.
How does the life of a PM look like at Swiggy right now?
In general, the product management role was quite different.
How are you infusing AI both in your work and how do you see Swiggy looking at it as an organization? So, hi Ayush, thank you so much for doing this. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and it is really, really nice of you to do this with us. And the idea of doing this podcast is to bring out PM stories that folks usually rarely get to hear, and of course, very different journeys. And today we'll try and deep dive into your journey. But before we start, why don't you let the viewers know a little bit about yourself and maybe walk us through your journey in brief or through your background in brief.
Hey, hi Malay. First of all, thank you for hosting me for this, and it's always interesting to talk about journeys. I totally agree that different PMs have had different journeys in the last 5 to 10 years, especially if you talk about India.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll just talk about myself a little. My name is Ayush. I've been working in Swiggy from last 4 years as a senior PM. Talking about my background, I've actually done engineering and worked on a bunch of startups. I started my career as a consultant in Wipro.
Okay.
That was an
Interesting.
on-campus hiring, and post that, just the curiosity of getting into startups. Somewhere around the period of 2016, 17, where the startups in India in general were picking up, and it enticed me quite a lot. So that's how I basically stumbled upon, multiple startups, worked with them, and yeah, so and did a bunch of different kind of roles before landing up onto a PM role. And then once I got into it, that just really realized that this is pretty interesting and this is something that I can pursue for a longer time. So
Nice.
yeah.
So startups happened, with the interest in startups happened first, and then PMing happened after that, right?
Yeah. So it's more, I think probably there was some, I wouldn't say so. When I started working at Wipro, I realized that it's a, like the consulting roles are pretty straightforward. It's like you have to talk to the clients. You have to basically,
Mm.
this is the requirement. This is what you need to do. Your scope of work has been defined, and then you work in the same vicinity as well.
Mhm.
Somewhere, because you keep reading news about the startups, and then it sort of enticed me that, okay, I also want to be a part of something which
Hmm.
creates a different kind of an impact. And yeah, in the middle of it, somewhere I stumbled upon it. So this was to specifically talk about how I ended up into product management. How I discovered, first of all, was I was after Wipro, I was working in a startup called Kickstart Jobs. Was working more of a, I was sort of their first hire in the team.
Mhm.
And I was doing a bunch of roles, like be it from operations, account management, just figuring out stuff. And then later, once I remember like having that conversation with the tech guy, I was trying to get a dashboard made out of it. And I just went on there and just went to the board and made a diagram that I need this. He's like, dude, it doesn't work like this. You give me a document. Like, what is a document? I said, okay, let me Google something for you. And then he showed me this is a product requirement document that you need to make. I said, okay.
Nice.
So
That's your first PRD.
yeah, that was my first PRD, and then he sent me a few articles that this is what product management is about. Read about.
Nice. Hmm.
That basically sparked the curiosity in me as to why basically is this a field, first of all, because when you're new, what you think is
Correct.
that, okay, I need something on a software to work, and I'll tell somebody, they'll make it, and that's pretty much it. But once you read about it, you go deeper into it, then you realize, okay, it's a lot more than what you are just imagining right now.
Absolutely. So it's very deep. I mean, it's very pivotal also. And I think from a software developer to a PM, I think we'll double click on that a little. That's a very interesting part of this. But before we kind of double click that, let me take you further back, maybe in the days you were leading up to your IIT days. What was your mental makeup at that point? I'm sure, I mean, at least I can say for myself, I did not have a clue of what I would do or why am I picking a branch or what am I doing with it.
Hmm.
But was it similar for you? How was the mindset there, and talk to me a little bit about your college journey.
Yeah. So actually, an interesting one. So I studied geophysics. This was
Oh,
so
interesting.
okay.
Nice.
So I was in IIT ISM Dhanbad. The
Ah,
college is pretty famous for earth science courses.
correct.
And if you want to get into oil, if you want to get into mining, or just, earth science research, that's the place to go. The thing is that I had a little bit of interest in physics, and that's probably the end of my knowledge to take a branch uh, called geophysics. College was pretty interesting. So the atmosphere when I was in college was that you need to keep your focus into the domain itself. Okay.
Ah,
Like it's if you want to do something outside of the domain, it's like okay, you're not maybe serious about those things. So I
hmm.
sort of those 5 years were mainly gone into creating projects for working on projects on geoscience. One good thing was that in geophysics you can do two kind of projects. One where you have to go out on the field, do some research, data analysis. The other one where you can also develop softwares for the industry to
Correct.
analyze data. So that's the side I went to. Sort of worked on a lot of plugins, did a lot of trainings where coding was sort of involved, and also picked up a lot of side projects in general,
Hmm.
which involved these things. Uh,
Nice. So they
and
were like core side projects based on
yeah,
the field that you were part of.
yeah, exactly. Some course projects, some just working out with seniors because the branch was not, it's like you can choose
Yeah.
to be on the application side or you can choose to go on the research side as well. Like a lot of my colleagues or branch mates went for a PhD in the same field and now are working as scientists at different places.
Hmm.
So, because of that, there was a general curiosity among the people who were working, studying these courses. So, we used to pick up a lot of side projects as well. Just not even, even if there's not a professor involved, just like two or three of us working on something. So, and make plugins, make softwares for the industry, and then see how those would work out. Uh,
Hmm.
just like you, I also wasn't aware about product management at all during college days. But the skills that I was developing led me to a role that I was hired for the first time, which was the consulting role in Wipro. So Wipro specifically had come for hiring someone in the energy domain where people who
Oh.
had some knowledge of coding and some
Hmm.
knowledge of the domain. They needed people like us to take up projects from, uh, you know, uh, oil companies or mining companies per se and develop their software. So while Wipro has the suite for software development, and the mining companies or the oil companies have the suite for their domain, they
Hmm.
needed somebody to bridge the gap, and that's where
Got
we
it.
used to come in to talk to the clients, understand what they exactly need, and then work with the developers to and the project managers to basically come down to the final requirement, and then they can work on these things. So,
Okay.
in hindsight, if I look at it, the role was slightly similar to product management in some way or the
Correct.
other.
Yeah.
But
Consult is actually very similar if you look at
yeah,
it in that sense. Hmm.
right. But I was still not aware of that what exactly product management is about. So yeah, that's my
Interesting.
journey from college to the first job. That's
Got
about.
it. So while on paper it seems like, a consulting role, and that's what it was, but you were hired basically for the core skills that you picked up at ISM essentially, correct?
Yeah. There's something called domain consultants. It's
Ah,
mainly in these IT firms where they need people with some specialization and some understanding of uh, how software engineering would work.
got
So
it.
that's
Got
that's
it.
cool.
And how long did you spend as a consultant at Wipro?
I was there for 1.5 years. Did a bunch of projects, two to three projects I think I was part of.
Got it. And
Uh,
I'm assuming at some point in this 1.5 years in your project, you would have figured out that, okay, maybe product management is something that you should try for, or how did the next step happen?
Not exactly product management to start with. It
Mhm.
was like two or three of us were from the same college hired for this role at
Correct.
Wipro.
Mhm.
And surprisingly, all of us were just curious about startups at that point in time. And we were even trying to build something of our own, but like just on paper and all. But then we thought, okay, maybe just get into some startups and work it out. So I started applying for, just looking at different startups, and then that's where I tried to reach out to a few folks, and then Then after that, that's what Kickstart jobs happened. So basically,
Hmm.
that was the founder was one of my college senior. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I hadn't met him before, but I just messaged him. I thought, okay, he's hiring, he's looking for someone. I'll just see what they work at.
Hmm.
And they were trying to do something pretty interesting in the hiring tech space, which I thought at that time that it's something that, if it clicks, could be one of a kind of a, solution and can become big. And I'll get to learn a lot. Okay. And so that's pretty much it. The role was very open when I had joined. Like, you'll do
Typically, my
everything.
first role was also very similar, where it was you do everything and
Yeah.
then you become a PM eventually.
Yeah. So that's what happened at Kickstart. I was not exactly a PM at Kickstart. It was a very open role, doing
Hmm.
a bunch of stuff. And because the company was like that, that there was a lot of operations work and business development work that was happening. Majority of the products that were there were mainly meant for the backend team to be able to operate on these things. So it was a
Hmm.
small team. Devs used to sit with us, with the ops, sales, us, everyone. And whenever we wanted something to get built, it was just like on the fly. Okay, I need this thing. Like, okay, I'll give it to you tomorrow. So that's pretty much it. How this. But one thing that I realized very early in the Kickstart days was the part of figuring out things. Okay, like
Hmm. Because you were like thrown in.
yeah, I was just thrown in like, okay, you go and do this. And like, there were times like I just took up the account management division, had no
Hmm.
idea about sales, just went on with the flow, and spoke to a bunch of clients, set up the SOP for the account management team and all those things, read about it. And I think that somewhere piqued my interest into just trying to learn what different departments do.
Hmm.
So while in Kickstart, because all these departments were sort of working together, I knew a little bit about each of them, like what operations does, product management, finance, tech, sales, even let's say leadership. What are their roles and what kind of talks do they have with the investors and all. So strategy per se. So all these things were working very close to me. I think it sort of helped me get easily into product management because
All right.
when you're trying to talk to a business counterpart or a leader at your organization, this kind of perspective sort of helps you bring down the solution, create the right products, achieve those goals. So you can question these things out as well. So that's in Kickstart. That's as I was telling in the beginning. So this is where when I was talking to one of the tech guys, that's when he told me, okay, you read about this, and
Nice.
that's when
Very
I discovered the role exactly.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, startup roles like that, I mean, essentially, it's a very interesting and inspiring thing, right? Because you were genuinely curious about something, and then you
Yeah.
just went in and tried to find the first avenue which could give you exposure to that. That was startups. And yeah, very similar in terms of how I look at it as well is very, I mean, you get that role and then you're asked to do everything. But
Yeah.
the PM role is such that by default eventually you start gravitating towards it, especially if you worked at product companies. So that's nice. So was that discussion with that person around PMing the starting point? Then how what happened next? As in, how did you transition then to the PMing proper after your interest was peaked with this part?
Yeah, so that was a very, I would say that took a lot of effort at my end, and that
Mhm.
was because back in 2016, 17, this happened,
Correct.
and like I just knew that there's a role. I did not know
Yeah.
any product manager, to be honest, at that time, and there were a very few, to be honest, back then. Okay, now if
Correct.
you talk
Absolutely.
to every
Yeah.
company has figured out that you need PMs for every department, and that's how you scale up. So I just started reading about it. Okay,
Hmm.
just going to just looking at articles, going to YouTube, what exactly is product management. And by the time I was, 1.5 year down the line, I thought, okay, I'll probably need to, if I want to pursue PMing, I need to, maybe move into a company which creates these products which are either sellable in the market or are to be used by the customers because
Hmm.
Kickstart the product was we'll help you hire.
Yeah.
So
So it was for
that's
businesses. Hmm.
exactly. So that's the thing. Now I wanted to move to a company which makes tech products so that
Hmm.
I can sort of understand and do this. So trying to get into product management at that point in time, I tried to directly get a role. And that took a bit of time for me. Okay, I'll directly go as a product manager somewhere. So that's when I realized, okay, maybe this transition directly cannot happen. I
Interesting. Hmm.
um, and that's basically that I concluded based on looking at a lot of just product manager CVs or LinkedIn profiles. How are they transitioning into it? So either people are coming from consulting background, sales, tech,
Hmm.
operations, something like that. So and
What was
that's
your official designation at that point?
sorry
What was your official designation at that point?
at Kickstart.
Yeah, Kickstart.
Just a core team member, nothing else. So
Oh,
just
okay.
like I took
So
up
this,
operations for 6 months, account management for 3 months, then product
okay,
work, then
got it.
strategy at some time as well, because it was a small team of like 40 people. Okay, so
Understood. So there was like nothing to really base this upon. It was more of a
yeah.
canvas that you had where you got like good exposure, but then you had to work really hard to convert it into like a PM narrative or a PM story.
Exactly. So that's like I had to look at my own profile and see what work I have done and how do I highlight this for this particular role. So I had created a lot of dashboards, worked on as to what are the things that we'll develop in the next 2, 3 years, or what does a client need basically for
Hmm.
a product to look at. So all these things were is something that I used to highlight in my resume. And but whenever so one thing as I was saying that I did was to look at the profiles of a lot of fellow PMs in the industry. Second thing that I realized was what clicked me after giving interviews.
Hmm.
I tried to go for a product role. People would tell me, okay, we can transition you into product, but not, probably on day one. Let's start
Okay.
with some other role, like a
Hmm.
business analyst or a, operations manager or something like that. And 3 months, 6 months, we'll pick up some product work and then maybe you can transition into it. So that
Hmm.
is what the conversation that I had at after Kickstart when I was trying to join LimeTray. So I was interviewed by the founder back then. So he said, okay, I think you have the skills, but what I need you to first do is become an ops manager, manage the team, but not just that. I want you to improve the processes here. Okay, find the
Hmm.
gaps. Can we automate something? Can we change the SOPs? Things like that.
Hmm.
So I worked.
Like a modern founder's office kind of role at that point. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I would manage the entire. So Lime Tray basically is it's basically as a B2B solution for the restaurant industry. They
Yeah.
have a restaurant platform. They make a bunch of different solutions like a billing software, inventory management and whatnot.
Hmm.
So they do all of that. So they had an ops team. I think around 15 to 20 folks were there in that team. So this was the first transition that I made at that point in time. So apart from managing the team, because that was one part of the job, I used to look at that what are those gaps as to where are we faltering and can I do something about this? Can I talk to a PM? Can he help me out, or can he or she help me out, or maybe I can figure something out through just basic automation that can happen with the help of a plugin or something, and I'll just do that. So, a few interesting things that I did back then was like, these ops team used to sit on a floor and used to get tickets on Freshdesk, but there was no
Ah.
alerting mechanism on Freshdesk back then. Okay, you can't get
Oh.
a ping or an alert. Somebody needs to keep refreshing and checking the tickets.
Hmm.
And restaurant industry in general is like that. You'll get certain requests which have to be fulfilled in the next probably
Correct.
20 minutes. Okay.
Correct.
So that's when I figured out somewhere that how can I create an alert? So figured out that okay, you can integrate Freshdesk to Slack whenever
Hmm.
an urgent ticket comes in. So it will ping over there. So once it
Nice.
pings, somebody notices, they act on it. So I did these 3 to 4 sort of improvements over there, which uh, I think I realized that okay, this is something that I'm able to do. I spoke to
Hmm.
the PMs over there as well. They said, yeah, this looks something that a PM should be doing anyway. So yeah, 3 months, 4 months down the line, after that, then they had a role of an APM, not
That's
exactly an APM, but a more of a product analyst, I would say, that
uh-huh.
you take up some work with a PM. So I used to report to a senior PM at the organization.
Got it.
and then he used to assign me work. So
Hmm.
that's the first time that I transitioned into the product role at that point in time on, let's say, on paper. So yeah, so that's how it happened.
Got it. That's very inspiring actually, because anyone who's kind of looking at making it into PM and like you said, right, analyzed that this is how what kind of roles really work out and all of that. But at the core of it, it's just hustle, right? As in trying to, because I don't think you had exposure to, okay, how does Freshdesk work? How does these alert work? How do you integrate on Slack and all of that? It's just that hustle to figure things out. And I think that's probably a big takeaway for me and should be for most people watching as well, which is, just ended up figuring out making things work, and usually that gets rewarded very well. So yeah, that's very nice to know.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, that's what I figured out at that point in time. So I mean, if you look in hindsight at anyone's profile or their journey, because these things are not talked about. Nobody,
Yeah,
you don't write these things out. So
right.
when you look at somebody's profile, okay, he was a student at ISB, got into product management, but he that person must have done at least 10 things to
Correct.
get there.
Correct.
And those 10 things are very crucial for anyone who's trying to get into a role of a product manager. And like just those things, I think those things are talked less about in general. We talk about the theory of product management, but how do you get there? That's the
Yeah.
first part of it.
No,
So
absolutely. That's so true, and that's actually a very good takeaway as well. I think, and also I don't get that sense that you were actually cautiously planning to make it into product or doing things that a quote unquote typical PM would do. It was just problem solving, right? As in
yeah.
problems given to you, you were just solving them, and that was what was creating the impact in, let's say, the founder's mind or whoever's mind to
Mhm.
to give you that chance. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah. That was actually a interesting conversation that I had with the founder as well back then. I think I'm able to do all these things. It'll be a good transition for me. And if you have something I can pick up. So that kept on happening for a few months, and then he also figured out, okay, this is something that we can put him to. And yeah.
Awesome. Got it. Now then, the big one happened, which is Swiggy. So how long did you work at LimeTray, and how was that? How was the next step worked out? Because one thing is that is happening so far is that you've moved from like a very core domain to a startup, which was a very generalist role, then to another startup slash tech company, but the domain is completely different, which is billing, invoicing, inventory, restaurants,
Yeah.
taxation, compliance, etc. SaaS essentially.
Mhm.
But from there, how did the next step happen, and how long did you take to kind of frame up your mind that, yeah, this is what I want to do now?
So actually, after LimeTray, I joined another company called SplashLearn. Okay,
Oh, okay.
then it was Swiggy. So I'll just talk, and that was I want to talk about that because that's basically shaped up my or polished my skills of product management. I'll be honest on that because so LimeTray was I worked though those LimeTray was a B2B company, so I worked a little bit on that, and that's when I started meeting people. I started visiting all these meetups that used to happen back then. And
Mhm.
I spoke to a lot of PMs, and then I realized that the kind of problems that they're solving in B2C side more interesting to me at some point in time. B2B problems are also interesting. B2C, it's more moving towards understanding the consumer mindset, getting into all these things. B2B, when I was in Line Tray, was focused more on prioritization, and all these things were a little more focused upon. So that's when I thought that, okay, I'm early into product management. Now is the time I can make a transition. Uh, so it's not that I am a B2B PM as of now. It's
Correct. It's
just
still
like
early. Yeah.
6 months, 8 months of work experience. So that's when I tried for SplashLearn. It's an EdTech product in mainly operates in the US markets,
I see.
and so they were hiring for an APM back then. So I thought, okay, this is the kind of a role that I can try for, and I had already heard good things about that company. I just being in the startup circle for some time, you get to have connections now. Then you speak to people, and then they told me, okay, so one good thing in that company is that you do product management by the book. Okay,
Mhm.
so
Good. Proper PM.
you
Yeah.
learn a lot. You learn a lot because firstly. all the biases go away. The product is an EdTech product sitting in US. So now
Correct. So you don't have like any bias or any
any bias
preconceived.
at all because and it's for the early age kids. So there are three people
Huh.
involved: teachers, parents, and the kid.
Correct.
I'm not a teacher, not a kid, and I was not a parent back then.
Hmm.
So it's not a relatable domain. You have to talk to someone to figure out stuff.
Correct.
So I thought, okay, let me try this. So that's so in Splashen, I was there for around 3 years till 2022. I was there and
Nice.
worked on a bunch of things and learned quite a lot. A lot of senior leaders were there, which uh, used to give us perspective. We talked a lot, did a lot of projects, and the work there was very different from the previous product role that I had done. This was highly experimental. Like we would try out stuff, keep on trying out stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
in comparison to LimeTree, where because it's a B2B product, it's more like you make something, it will be used. But
Correct.
in
You
B2C,
features depth. Hmm.
yeah, so there it's more like hits and misses. Something will work, something will not work. It's okay, but you keep figuring out, keep be curious about it. So that's
Yeah.
how Splashlearn happened. And Splashlearn basically that's for 3.5 years I worked on a different set of projects, and then by the uh, I think 2 years into it, I worked on something really interesting, which sort of worked out very well. Like
Got
just
it.
business wise, creating an impact
Hmm.
into the for the company when it comes to revenue and
Was
everything.
it like a feature or was it like?
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
like a feature. So so it was a new product that was getting launched in the, I
Okay.
was working on a new product and but it had gained a lot of traction, but it had not gained any kind of monetary value. Okay,
I
so
see.
the monetary loops were there in the system, but we were yet to figure out exactly how do I make money out of this. So I was already working on creating those loops for almost an year as to how do I make people subscribe to this product, how do I make them buy this product, or how do I make them realize that this is good, and even to an extent that what will you give for what will be a free product, what will be a paid product. It was a freemium model, so juggling with these things. So that's when I one of the experiments that I did over there, and uh, that worked out really well. Okay, and the revenue for that product jumped almost like 7x to 8x in a span of 6 months.
Mhm.
And one good thing about these B2C products is that if it works, after that you don't have to do anything. It's a flywheel. Okay,
Correct.
so
Yeah, it
once
just
you
keeps
launch,
working.
it
Hmm.
keeps working. And probably the smallest tech investment I had did over there, which made it work. Before that, I had sort of done a lot of things with bigger teams and everything, and few of them worked, few did not work. But this sort of just boomed up. So that
Correct.
became a very good success story for me to, talk about in general.
Hmm.
And so that's when I realized, okay, I have been working here for a while, and now while they have a good customer database, I would want to work on probably the biggest customer databases and biggest customer user bases where I can
Basic.
be, yeah, so where I can be, making products that impacts millions in general. And that's when basically, that's when Swiggy happened.
Nice.
So yeah. So
Nice. Very interesting. Sorry. Go on.
yeah, so that's when basically one good thing that helped me. So what happens is when you try to apply for these bigger organizations, it's that you either come from a very big organization. That's a simple fact. The other thing is if you have good stories written, if you have good success stories in your CV. So this particular project that I was talking about opened a lot of doors for me when it came to interviews. Like, okay, so and people, as soon as I used to get into an interview, the first thing that they would want to talk about is this particular feature. I
Got it.
highlighted it quite well. So
Hmm.
that's how Swiggy also happened.
Got Perfect. I mean, yeah, one big thing is how, and I think that's been my experience with EdTech as well, because you're so away from what people feel, right? Kids, parents, teachers, schools. There are so many different stakeholders that you don't even know what they're actually optimizing for. And in your case, of course, it's even US, so it's even worse from that perspective. But that gives you like a very, very strong ability to actually build a very sharp product sense, because the moment you're able to empathize and solve things for people who you don't know, or people who
Mhm.
who are not, who you're not biased towards, essentially. It becomes a you become like a very well-rounded PM. So interesting. How did the application process happen at Swiggy? Was it like a standard, apply through the website, or did you like get in touch with someone? How did that happen?
Yeah, so actually, I was applying at multiple places back then. I had made a list of companies that I wanted to target at, and then Swiggy was one of them. So I had just actually I had reached out to an HR on LinkedIn.
Oh, got it.
He sort of then called me up, and
It
then
was a cold reach out, huh?
cold reach out. Yeah, and like,
Cold reach outs work.
yeah,
Hmm.
cold reach outs really work.
Got
So
it.
yeah, so that's how it happened. And she called me up and told me that this is the interview process that we have.
Mhm.
It'll be like, these many rounds would happen, and this is how it will go on. So I said okay, and just wanted to understand what department exactly this is and all these things.
Mhm.
So he explained me everything. The next day, basically the hiring manager. So in Swiggy, what happens is that there's a hiring manager who leads the hiring for a particular position apart from the HR. So
Mhm.
I think it's common across multiple companies as well.
Yeah,
So they would reach out to you, and that person basically then he gave me a understanding of what the role entails, and then what exactly would the process look like from here. Okay.
got
So,
it.
and then basically the process started. It was, I think, 6 rounds of interviews that had happened.
Rounds. And this was when?
2022.
2022, just after COVID.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I was actually home so back
ah,
then, and that's when the interview process had started. So 6 rounds happened, six plus an HR round,
mhm.
where different rounds entailed different discussions. So firstly, there was a product thinking round, then product strategy, business strategy, data analysis, tech. Then at the end, there was the hiring manager basically took another round of product management in general. So
Hmm.
those five to six rounds happened. Even design, I think, was one of the rounds. So these 5 to 6 rounds happened, and the hiring process takes a bit of time. That's
Hmm.
what my understanding was back then. So like around it took around 1.5 months to close the entire process.
Oh, that's a
Uh,
lot.
and but I was mentally prepared for it because I was parallelly giving interviews at these bigger organizations, and I realized that one interview happens, just wait for a fortnight probably, and that's when
Mhm.
the second interview is going to happen now. So yeah, so that's how it worked, and 1.5 months into these rounds. After that, basically, then the HR call happened, and then the offer was rolled out. So.
Interesting. That was very rigorous. How were you preparing for this? Was it more about you preparing your own narratives of your own work, or were you using some structured method to prepare?
Yeah, so both actually. One thing that I just took a shot at is that every role that I've worked on, the
Mm-hmm.
first two pointers inside the every role in my resume would talk about the biggest impact that I've created at the organization. It will not talk about my role. Okay, so
Nice.
even if I'm
Mm-hmm.
a senior product manager even I'm a product manager at SplashLearn,
Mm-hmm.
the first point is not that what product do I work at. First point is that I created this impact by launching this thing. After that, rest of the things started. So my narrative, whatever was there in my resume, was basically that I used to speak about in my interviews as well. Then the other thing was just preparing in general for a product management role, because
Mm-hmm.
I was in Splashin for around 3.5 years. So the interview skills had probably, I had to brush them up as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
while you work, the work that happens, there's slight difference in what the interview actually happens at.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's when I basically started researching, are there like books, is there material? So I used to watch a lot of these interviews on YouTube. There are multiple channels.
Yeah, correct. There's Exponent, I think PM, a lot of stuff, a lot of
Yeah,
things.
yeah. So used to do that, like they would solve a question. I'll take the question, pause the video, solve it by myself, then play the video and see how different am I from the solution that probably a PM at Google is giving. Okay, so that's how what that was one way of practicing. Second thing was that I studied like two books. What I realized was that you can't study it like a course.
Yeah.
So there are like 7 to 8 kind of chapters, different kind of interviews that happen. As I was saying in the beginning, product thinking, design thinking, all these rounds. So it's all like look at a few, look at some material from each of these chapters on different days. So
They're very modular. They're not like interlinked in general.
yeah, they're very modular. But the thing is that if you're not never read about these things, it's generally think of it and I have to finish the book of a
Uh-huh.
200 page. But I think I took that approach. Okay, let me just solve questions for each of these
Right.
rounds separately, and that's how I sort of prepared. But like before even starting to apply, like I took like a month's time to just prepare for an interview or a call because if I just thought maybe if let's say I get a call and they want an interview tomorrow, I should be prepared for it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Correct.
so
Some base prep and then the grind of
yeah,
application, interview, and more
yeah,
practice.
yeah, yeah.
Very interesting. And yeah, and patience also, considering it took like
Quite
45.
a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So 45 days was the interview process. Like I was applying even for 1.5 months before that. So and then
got it.
prep. So if you
So
take
that
this,
entire thing took maybe 2.5, 3 months then.
yeah, yeah. So from the day that you think that you want to apply versus the
Mhm.
day that you get hired, it's a period of I think 4 months, 3 to 4 months in general.
Got it. Got it. That's very helpful to know. So then 2022, you made it into Swiggy and doing very well. Uh, Help me understand how does the life of a PM look like at Swiggy right now? What are the kind of things that you are solving in your role? What are the kind of day-to-day stuff that you work on, both maybe yeah, day-to-day and then big picture?
So Swiggy in general, the product management role was quite different from what I had done earlier
Okay.
in terms of the structure of how things work, not the probably the product or anything, just how Swiggy approaches product management. So I have worked in I right now working in the dine out team. Uh, I when I was hired, I was in the food delivery team. So I've worked on different teams, different pods. So how Swiggy basically operates is mainly in a pod structure. Okay, it's not like you are always working with the entire department of the product managers that sits with you, but there's a pod kind of a structure that it'll be like 1 or 2 PMs, few business folks, somebody from the operations, and then you have a tech team. Then and then you have a goal, like you have a project or a goal or something like that, and then you work on these things. So that's so in the beginning, in the food delivery team, when I was there, I used to work on a lot of new initiatives back then, just trying out different products as to experimental products as to whether they would work, not work, and the so that's and then you would have so there was a business lead generally you have, and then the pod structure would be there. Although you did not report to the business lead, you would report to the product team, but you would work very closely with the business team over there. Okay,
Got
so
it.
that's how
Nice.
these things work.
So it's like a mini unit of people executing completely. Do you get like a lot of decision making ownership as well? How does that work? Is it like centralized or pod wise?
Yeah, so it's actually both in a way.
Uh-huh.
So as a PM, so depends on what scale, what stage of the product it is at. Okay, so if you're working on a mature product, let's say you're working on search optimization for the food delivery side or something. So
Mhm.
they're a very mature product. Okay, decisions are made mainly business backwards or something. If you come up with something from the product side, it's fine. But yeah, so that's how this happens. But once you're in a product which is at a nascent stage, that's where a lot of product decisions are taken in the beginning itself. You work closely with the business teams, but then you sort of also be a part of what the product would sell like. What does the business strategy look like? How will we approach this? How will we scale this thing? Part of all those discussions. Once it scales, once something scales, now the distinction between the business team and the product team becomes slightly more clear. Okay.
Got it. Hmm.
Uh,
So
so now
before
you
that,
have a
everyone is like working very cohesively together.
yeah, so at that point in time, it now becomes like a by the book product management where you create a roadmap, you work, basically get to a roadmap, get the leadership aligned and everyone, and then you work on these things. So decision making, how it works is that you have a business board, generally either led by a director or a VP,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also if it's a and then you also basically report to the leadership, and then they also get involved in the project, and That's more like an involvement in once in a month or twice in a month, where they would also try to work with us and see whether we are taking this in the right direction or is there's a pivot that is required. So that's how basically the entire structure works. As a PM, you're responsible for anything that happens on the product. Okay, that's just given. Uh, any problem that comes in, anything that needs to be resolved for, you take up. The roadmap ownership is sits with you.
Mhm.
Obviously, I'm talking about somebody from senior PM and above, not
Of
some.
course, not the execution layer.
Yeah, so that's like you're responsible for the roadmap, you're responsible for the pivots, you're responsible for the business goals as well. So you work very closely with the business counterpart over there. Like, okay, this did not work. Let's figure out something to achieve this goal. Or if they say, okay, we have something that needs to be done on priority, because the competition has launched something like this. So let's just pivot again. So that's where the role involves at a senior PM or let's say even above a senior PM roles. That's how it is.
Correct. Perfect. That's very nice. What is something big and new that we can expect out of Swiggy if you're okay to talk about that?
Uh, so, yeah, so I'm working on a product called, digital menu where
Uh-huh.
like you it's now live across 300, 400 outlets. So now it's a out of home project where you go to a restaurant and you want to make an order. So you basically you've scanned those QRs, right? Like where you
Yeah.
can get out. Now Swiggy is also coming up with that, where you scan it, it opens inside Swiggy, and then
Oh, wow.
order goes to the restaurant. We realize that that's a pretty unorganized market, and
Yeah, yeah, the experience isn't too great. At least I've heard it at least 15, 20 times when people scan because it opens in a web, it opens in a I mean, there is a lot of stuff because you need people to log in and do a table OTP with waiters
yeah.
and all of that. I'm sure Sugi would like do a great job at solving this, and it's like strategically fit as well because I'm assuming you book on dine out, go there, scan menu, order, use all the payment methods, so it makes a very nice ecosystem play there.
So that's the project. It's still in nascent stage, I would say. 300,
Mhm.
400 restaurants at a level of Swiggy is still
Mhm.
like you have a big market to target at.
Of course.
So we're still figuring out a lot of stuff here, but yeah, it looks like an interesting thing. If it
Yeah.
scales, would be a different kind of a work that we are doing at Swiggy.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. Last thing before I would ask you for any advice for people, and that's around AI, right? So, I mean, everyone's chasing it, everyone is worried, everyone is thinking, and so many kind of conjectures on what's going on. But for you, with someone working at probably India's largest consumer application, um, how are you infusing AI both in your work, and how do you see Swiggy looking at it as an organization? I'm sure a lot of internal workflows have been automated and LLMified, if I can say that. But what's your take on that? How is it becoming coming to action on the ground at a large company like Swiggy?
Yeah, so actually, I mean, I would, what Swiggy has done in the last 1 year has been like there has been a decent amount of focus in adopting AI, not just for internal processes, not just for, enabling everyone, but generally to launch products as well.
Hmm.
So, I mean, anyone who's into product management or who's generally just picking up AI is, I would say the approach would not be very different from if you're, just be curious about it and
Hmm.
you'll find answers. Uh, it's not that you have to jump into AI on day one just because everybody says so. You need to really find value in it, and that's when you do it. So,
Mhm.
and that's what the last 4 to 5 months of our work has gone into, as to just to understand where at this point in time, is AI helpful or not? So basic
Mhm.
things have already flown into where we are using products to let me just break it down into three spaces. One is at an organization level. Swiggy has for sure come up with certain tools which help us, and there's an ecosystem around it. Like all
Mhm.
we basically meet and people talk about a lot of things as they have worked upon, and what kind of what's the next big was the next big thing in AI. So that sort of sets up a knowledge base for you in general as to what are the things that you can do. Okay. Having said that, I would say if you just don't need like organization to do that. If you're just curious, even YouTube or even a social media channel like Instagram is going to help you out, and there's a bunch of things that people talk about in general as to how AI can help you in your role. Second thing is solving your internal processes. Okay, right. You go through an entire life cycle of product management, starting from ideation to writing down the requirements to working with design, then creating a PRD, uh, and then giving a walkthrough to the engineering, and then later on so on and so forth, and analyzing data and whatnot. So in this entire cycle, there are 3 to 4 good pivotal points where AI, I think, has created a direct impact. Okay, so uh, like let's say we all know that period where you have an idea and you want to talk about it, but now you don't have a prototype ready, you don't have designs ready because you're a PM at the end of the day, you're not a designer, you can't create those things. AI does wonders at that point in time. Okay, like you just write it, type it, you can make 10 people visualize what you're thinking about. So very simple, very easy, straightforward space to work at. And other points as well, where you want to write requirements, AI helps you with that. Even the ideation bit, when you're doing strategy, you have customer insight sitting with you, you have data insight sitting with you. At that point in time, you want somebody to just holistically create the entire structure. Uh, while when I say right now, it sounds very simple, just to
Yeah.
get to that point where it's like, okay, I have found the right, I've given the right prompts, I've gone through that exercise. For me to sort of get a little efficient, I wouldn't say that I'm there, right? But just to improve my efficiency, it has taken like next last 3 to 4 months or 5 months of time. So, yeah, so this is the internal process bit. Then last is where you can actually use AI in your products. Okay, so there are things that are pretty obvious across industries where people want to put chatbots and helping you do the searches and everything. That's straightforward. But apart from that, you yourself would know in a product, when you're ideating your product, there are places where it's a straightforward fit, where AI can do a much better job than creating a plug and play product for somebody to use. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say if you're working in the B2B setup, the assistance that AI can provide in setting up a product at the client side can do wonders. That's what I've seen. So just giving
Absolutely.
an example, let's say you're just setting the layout color. Most of the people are clueless, or they take help of a designer. AI can do that job for you. So things like that happen. So that's the last bit where we are working heavily on AI now, where we're creating products where either the entire product is AI, or it's a product where some part of it is some features of that product basically are AI-led features. So that's how I would divide it into 3 parts, and that's how you would look at. And I think once you work on the second or the third part a little bit, you in a few months of time you can easily get there. So I would say like an entire advice, just be patient with it. Okay, and you can get there. So that's what my advice would be on this thing. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Just to round that up, what's your favorite AI tool? What's a tool that you use every day and that's slightly offbeat?
Not offbeat, but Lovable has improved
Mhm.
like anything in the last three
Yeah.
months. I mean,
Yeah.
what I had seen in the beginning, and the amount of prompts that it would take from at that
Yeah.
point in time to.
Can almost single shot everything on Lovable now. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. So I think I just love the output that comes out of that tool. Okay, you just
Yeah.
write something and it gives you very easy. So um, I don't know. I mean,
Amazing.
tool wise, but I think that's just uh, I mean, if something gives you output, and that's you can choose that tool itself. Okay, so nothing major that I would say is there. But yeah, Lovable for me is that tool as of now. In the last 2 months, I'm using that heavily and extensively.
Got it. Got it. Perfect. Awesome. Awesome. Great. Finally, for new people, right? People who are trying to break into PM.
Mhm.
Of course, there are so many questions that these people have. Do I need an MBA? Do I need tech and all of that? And I feel you debunk a lot of those theories, right? Because essentially, your story is more of a story of hustle, right? You figure problems out, you solve them, you got leverage, converted that, and really moved to what probably would be for any PM a dream role to work on a consumer product at that scale. So, what would your advice be for folks who are maybe at the stage where you were when you were a consultant or when you were an ops manager? What would the advice be? Because plenty of people are in that situation and they're wondering, what can I do to move into product?
Yeah, so I mean, I do mentor folks at times, and my advice has been very consistent in the last 2 to 3 years because that's just coming out of my experience. Firstly, just be a little observant. Okay, just
Okay.
because uh, when I got into product management versus what product management is today,
Mhm.
and getting into it has changed quite a lot. Okay, so when 18, 17, 18, even the interview processes that used to happen versus what the interview processes are today have evolved quite a bit. So just be observant on how things are happening right now. Okay, the other thing that I generally talk about is find what is an underrated thing to get into product management generally is that when you're trying to get into it, most of the people are trying to on day one trying to get into organizations which are doing big and have an established product department.
Absolutely. Hmm.
The problem is that it's tough to get there when you don't have experience. Okay, let's just be
Yeah.
honest about it.
You have
Okay.
to build credibility before you get there. Hmm.
Yes, but very easy space, very easy way to get into is to join an early stage startup. Okay, the thing is, two things can very easily happen over there. One, the barrier to enter is not that high. Secondly, you can have those conversation about keeping your role flexible in the beginning with the founders itself. Okay, because the approachability is easier at that point in time. So that's a very underrated area where what I have seen people don't focus much at, but can be an easy way to get into the role. And once you're into a role, once you become a product manager and it's against your designation and you've worked on a few products, then you start jumping the ladder. Okay,
Hmm.
so that way I think has not just for me. I've seen this for multiple folks. This has worked out quite well because you get an entry. So because if you don't get an entry, you either wait for a year or 1 year, or just I've seen people get frustrated, give up on these things. But these are the places where I feel we people need to focus a little more on. And third is just be patient with it. Okay, it's when you apply for a job, you're not going to get a job in on the 10th role that you apply to. Okay, just and you can't conclude on the 10th job application that okay, I am through. I am not getting a call. Okay, so those are three things that I would say. Talking about MBA, while I haven't done an MBA, I'm not going. I don't think it's a. I think it is useful for product managers also. I'll say why because I work with a lot of PMs who are pass outs from these colleges. Thing is that if you remember, we talked about in the beginning when we were trying to figure out, like both you and I have at some point in time figured out, okay, there is
Yeah.
something called product management and we can do it. Uh, MBA provides structure to it. Okay,
Yeah.
all
True.
those folks like because in engineering there are pods who are focusing on these different things, but it's not a whole college's environment that okay, I am going to get into product management or something, or I want to do these management roles.
Hmm.
MBA does provide that structure, like you have finance, consulting, product management, and operations and sales. Um, and the amount of information that I try to figure out that becomes slightly easier in an MBA college. Okay, because you
Hmm.
have colleagues, you have professors, you have the industry exposure over there. So yeah, I think at that point in time, it's a very helpful way to get into
Plus the
any.
network also, I think. I mean, it
That's
gives
the
you
network.
access to the uh, cream in terms of, because these are the people who are going to be leaders in the future at different
Yeah.
companies, get access to that. So yeah, from that perspective, it's pretty good. But I don't think it's required to break in. But yeah, maybe once you're
Yeah.
going up the ladder, it can, of course, become a good anchor.
Yep, yep. So I mean, that's what the thing is. If you're genuinely just want to get into it, passionately want to get into product management, you will, but people will eventually figure it out. Okay, it's not
Mhm.
that it's not possible, and there is a lot of material, lot of courses that are there in the industry which sort of help you nowadays. Uh, that's generally I've figured out who people who are trying to get into product management. Not all of them uh, eventually end up choosing product management, and that's not just because of choice but also because of the role at times. So I think MBA sort of helps you introspect as to what do you really want to do. Okay, because it's not just that, okay, maybe you're better suited for marketing or you're better suited for, some other role as well. So at that point in time, because most of the folks who want to get into product management are generally of the age of 24, 25, that's the point when you want to pivot or something. I think you've not entirely figured out what you want to do in life. So
Right.
it could be that we saw product management looks enticing, but could be something similar as well. So I think that way it's a good way to get into an MBA college as well.
Nice, nice. That's very, very useful, Ayush. Ayush, thank you so much for doing this. I think this is a great conversation. I've actually learned a lot and really inspiring in terms of how you've just hustled your way through a lot of situations and now building some of the experiences that all of us are so grateful for, because I'm sure I mean Dine Out or Swiggy or all of the products, everyone who's watching must have used them and they're like super happy about using them consistently. So thank you for that, and of course thank you for doing this for us. It was a great chat.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I mean, actually, a lot of questions that you asked today, I had never thought about the journey in the last few years in that way. So yeah, so it was fun talking to you,
Yeah.
and I hope this becomes useful for the folks who are getting into it. So yeah.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Great, great.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ayush. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Okay. Bye bye. Thank you.